Do you think we can live without copper? Many people probably don't realize how valuable copper is to the life of Americans. Beginning in the late 1800s, copper mining began in the American West. At the turn of the century, the development of efficient flotation processes led to the exploitation in areas of large ore deposits that contained copper in the host rock. The United States quickly becomes the world's largest producer in the world. Today, the country falls second under Chile. Dating back to the earliest stages of metallurgy, copper was being utilized in the minting of coin currency. Examples can be found throughout the Mediterranean from ancient Greece and Rome. Further east to the Byzantine India, and China. In those times, coins were used as traditional currency until the point at which its components exceeded the face value of the coin. Once face value was exceeded, coinage was readily melted down and sold as a commodity itself. Today, the U.S. penny is one of the most pervasive and recognizable examples of copper coinage. However, in 1982 marked the shift in content from 95% copper to only 2.5%, the modern standard. Thus, the penny is of particular interest in a case of study in the evolution, federal policy, distribution, storage, and value. The dramatic shift in content can be understood as the steady rise of the penny's copper value began to reach the threshold of the coin's face value. The Coinage Act of 1967 had already explicitly banned the melting down of U.S. coinage. All the same, the U.S. Mint became curious of the increasing demand for pennies and suspicious that individuals were attempting to hoard pennies for their intrinsic value. Copper was an essential component for household electricity, motors, brass musical instruments, and circuitry in silicon chips. The New York Mercantile Exchange is the bigger entity that regulates the distribution of trading of copper. Most of modern-day copper trades will go through the COMEX division and will be regulated by them in terms of how much copper would be transported to and where. Due to copper's versatility, it has diffused to most economic sectors, including construction, electronic, and general products. The decline and rise of copper prices are used widely by economists as indicators of economic growth and recession. This table shows the percentage of copper used in everyday materials that people during the 1920s to 1950s used. As you can see, without copper, none of these materials, which were crucial to the advancement of America into what it is today, would be existent. The rule of supply and demand governs our economy, as well as the value of copper over time. As technology evolved and became more advanced, more copper was necessary. Because copper is a limited resource, the value of copper will continue to increase as the supply dwindles. Copper production had a hard hit going into the Great Depression, and the world copper prices collapsed. The United States' foot in the copper production had fallen until after World War II. 3/4 of copper ever consumed has been produced in the period since World War II. Throughout the 1960s, the U.S. saw an increase in the growth of consumption and export rates. As this growth continued, so did our production rate. Also, the Vietnam War sparked an increase in the need for copper for their weapons and stockpiles. The value of copper in cents per pound has increased from below 50 cents in 1930 to just at 250 cents in 2012. From the 1930s to the 1960s, copper was typically mined, refined, and sent straight to market. On a large scale, copper demand stayed relatively steady, but copper does have a reputation, especially in recent decades, of short-term volatility. Storage of raw copper was, thus, fairly rare, short-term, and speculative in nature. Copper is taken from huge open pit mines by drilling and blasting explosive. The ore deposit is exposed by removing overburden and is taken out of the mine by trucks that can carry 500,000 tons. Then, using flotation method, the copper is concentrated by removing the waste material. Smelting occurs next, and copper undergoes chemical reactions to remove iron and sulfide. Copper is the first fire refined before it is sent to the final electrofining process. Alternative forms copper storage can be gleaned in form of in ground unmined ore and in copper and copper ally materials, where in ground storage is usually based on production rates versus profitability for mining companies. The recycling of copper goods has grown to be one of the most prominent sources in today's market, approximately one-third of all copper consumed. This is due to the fact that copper is 100% recyclable. The Kennecott Copper Mine in Utah is regarded as one of the premier copper-yielding mines in the U.S. This slide and link provide more in-depth detail on the extraction and refinement of copper. The General Mining Act of 1872 allows government-endorsed confiscation and protection of land for miners, while the Federal Land Policy Management Act of 1976 realizes the ecological impact of large-scale mining and sets up policies for national parks and confiscation of mining land to devote to wilderness study and replanting. In the 1980s, EPA created legislation known as Superfund, which can place contaminated landscapes on the MPL for cleanup and hold the companies responsible. Because of groundwater pollution, the Kennecott mines were placed on NPL for cleanup, and Kennecott complied. Later, the state of Utah sued Kennecott for groundwater damage in the southwest Jordan Valley, which had contaminated water, which was reaching the public. In the end, the federal courts rejected Utah's $12 million settlement, and no action was